Hey, what's up everyone? Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for a video that I've wanted to do for a while now, actually. So in this video, I am going to be giving my thoughts on Christian metal. Now, I do want to get something out of the way real quick. I am someone that has grown up in church. That was a part of my upbringing. That's how I was raised and everything. You could think of that what you want. And obviously, as many of you know, metal is one of my preferred styles of music, one of my preferred genres of music. So obviously Christian metal was going to come my way one way or another, basically. That's just the way that it goes, obviously. And actually, Christian metal was my gateway into the metal genre. Some of the first bands in metal that I ever got into were Christian bands, mainly the band Demon Hunter, who still to this day is my favorite band in the Christian metal scene, and still one of the only bands in that particular scene that I still like, but I'll get more into that. But I do want to give my take on Christian metal overall, because I feel like that this is something that I don't really dive into too much, and I have some pretty interesting takes, you could say, when it comes to this. So my thoughts on Christian metal overall. Let's start off with that. My thoughts on Christian metal overall. I'm just going to say this. I think a lot of these bands, they can do better. I do think that. I think that a lot of these bands, they can do better. And I think the biggest problem with Christian metal, at least for me personally, is actually not the reason that everyone else has with Christian metal. My issue with Christian metal is the fact that a lot of it is just not that original. You know, like I listen to some of these bands and I think, you know, like, why would I listen to this? Like, this is just kind of generic, you know, especially when it comes to metalcore. And I don't know what it is about the Christian metal scene, but it seems like metalcore is the biggest genre in that scene. You know, you look at these bands like Fit for a King, for instance, who I am not a fan of. I might have had like a little phase with them where I've liked them for a little bit, but I've just kind of outgrew their music for the most part. I decided, yeah, I'm not really into these guys too much. They sound pretty edgy for me. So there's that. But yeah, I think a lot of Christian metal bands, I think they struggle with originality. I think that's the biggest flaw with Christian metal, and honestly, Christian music as a whole. Like, obviously, you know, you hear all these complaints with contemporary Christian music, like a lot of the stuff you hear on K-Love Radio. A lot of that stuff, dare I say, is generic, you know? So there's that. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fans. You know, I think a lot of these bands are aware that the fans will just eat up anything that they do because there's a good message behind their music. Oh, but their lyrics are so positive and all this and that. First of all, something I want to say is good lyrics do matter. They do. Don't get me wrong. But you know what matters more? The music itself. How does the music sound? Is it generic? You know, or does it actually sound like there's actually some talent going on, you know? Like, that's the reason that I listen to music anyway. I mean, very, very, very rarely will I listen to music for the lyrics. You know, unless I'm really in the mood. But it's not that often, if I'm being honest. And again, this is coming from someone that has grown up in church, you know, who has grown up in this environment, you know, who has had many different Christian friends for years. You know, I've obviously been around Christians for years, and you know, that's just the way that it is. But you know, for me, it's just, I just can't relate to people on that level, you could say. And I understand that everyone's different, but typically it's like, well, I listen to music for the music. But here's the thing. If you only listen to music for the lyrics, what are you doing listening to metal? I mean, I'm not trying to sound condescending here, but it's the truth. Like, why are you listening to metal? Like, if lyrics are the only thing in music that matters, then go listen to contemporary Christian music. You know, go be uplifted by that style of music. You know? It's just the way that it is. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, but yeah, I think originality is honestly the biggest flaw when it comes to Christian metal. Now, the reason that a lot of people don't like Christian metal, I think, is a ridiculous reason, at least for a lot of people. I know that some people may share the same reasons I have to why, you know, I don't like a lot of these bands, but I think one of the big reasons why a lot of people dislike Christian metal are for obvious reasons, and to be honest, I think it's a ridiculous reason. There are a lot of people, especially those elitist metalheads, you know, the ones that say, like, oh, well, if it's Christian, it's not metal at all. Like, you can't be metal and Christian at the same time. You know, these edgy individuals that think they're cool because they hate on Christians. We all know these people. They're pathetic people. But they're the ones that hate on Christian metal just simply because it's Christian. You know, the music could actually be good, and it wouldn't matter to them. It's the fact that they're Christian is what steers them away. That is what makes them bash these bands and make fun of these bands. Now, again, if you want to make fun of them because they lack originality, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. But belief, that's irrelevant, all right? Yet these same metalheads are probably the ones that go around preaching equality and are probably SJWs and stuff. Well, equality for all except for Christians. Again, we all know these people. These people are just delusional, and I can't stand those people. Just saying. Now, I do think that there are a few exceptions when it comes to Christian metal. There are a few good bands. There is, of course, Demon Hunter, who, again, I'd say is my favorite in the Christian metal scene. And I think the reason Demon Hunter is really the exception and the one that really stands out to me when it comes to Christian metal is because of their range and their diversity in their songs. You know, like, you don't just get, you know, one side of them, you know, like, they're not just one-dimensional where you just get the same thing every album or whatever, you know, like, they're actually a unique band. And I do like Ryan Clark's vocals as well. So there you go. So I think Demon Hunter is really the exception when it comes to Christian metal, especially Christian metalcore. Because let's be honest here, a lot of Christian metal, I can't tell the difference from Fit for a King and every other Christian metalcore band. To be honest, that's just my take on it, of course. Some of you may disagree, and that's okay, but that's just the way I see it. Every Christian metal band, at least when we're talking the metalcore genre, every band that's not Demon Hunter, they all sound like Fit for a King to me. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's no variety, you know, there's just nothing, you know, they're all generic, you know. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, again, if you don't agree, that's fine. So I do think that Demon Hunter is the exception. And then, of course, you have POD, who I think is a really good band in the nu metal genre. Now, when it comes to Christian nu metal, not as well-versed into that scene, but I do like POD. And then there's, of course, the band Red. Now, Red, are they really metal? I more so classify them as hard rock or alternative metal, but either way, if you want to say Red is Christian metal, sure, throw them in that category of Christian bands that I do like as well. I've been a fan of Red for many years. I've seen them live a couple times. Really good band. So, again, Red, another good band. But most of the bands in Christian metal, I think, are just generic. And I think that they can do better. You know, and I think that's why I'm so tough on these bands, because I do feel that they could do better. And again, I blame a lot of the fans, because the fans will just eat up anything they do. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, how much technicality they have in their songs and, you know, what their song structures are, or, you know, or how generic it is, or whatever the case may be. As long as the lyrics lift them up, that's all that matters to them. But whatever, you know. Now, there's something else that I do want to say here when it comes to the fans of Christian metal and the ones that say, well, if you do listen to metal, then the only metal you should listen to is Christian metal. I gotta say something about that in particular. You do realize that if it wasn't for secular or non-Christian metal bands, we wouldn't have this conversation to begin with. We wouldn't even have the genre of metal. So, do you think Black Sabbath is a Christian band? I mean, I guess other than the song After Forever, which you could argue is a Christian song from Black Sabbath, but the band as a whole, no. I wouldn't say that Black Sabbath is a Christian metal band. And I know a lot of people, myself included, point to Black Sabbath as being the band that started metal. So there's that. I mean, it's like a lot of people seem to forget that their favorite Christian metal bands have been influenced by non-Christian bands. Let's go back to Demon Hunter, for instance. Let's take a look at their influence. They're influenced by bands like In Flames, bands in the melodic death metal genre, Fear Factory, so industrial metal, of course. So they've taken inspiration and influence from bands that are not Christian bands, of course. I mean, do you guys honestly think that metal started through Christian bands? Like, that's just kind of silly. But I know for some of these people, they don't care. They don't care. Well, they have this mentality, well, it doesn't matter how metal started. Christian metal is all that matters. And we have it now, and that's all that matters. It's ridiculous. It just shows that they have no appreciation for the genre as a whole. But it is what it is. But I have to point this out because a lot of these people, they don't get it. And they make this lame excuse, well, I don't want to be steered away from my faith and, all this and that with these secular bands and these non-Christian bands. Well, if that's the case, then I hate to say it, but your spirituality and your faith must not be that strong to begin with then. And again, if these Christian bands, these bands that you think are, so right with God and everything, these bands that you look up to so much, if they are listening to secular and non-Christian bands, obviously if they're taking influence from their sound, if they're listening to these bands, why can't you? Why can't you, honestly? That's my question. I just get so sick and tired of these people. I mean, obviously, as someone that has grown up in church, and being around Christians all my life, obviously I've encountered some whack jobs throughout my time, okay? Now, some of them, they're not as legalistic, but the legalistic ones are mainly the ones that I'm talking about here, the ones that I'm referring to here, the ones that put so much limit on their lives, that say, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, I can't do that. Now, listen, different strokes for different folks, as they say, right? If something works for you, then so be it. If you want to stay away from certain music because you don't feel that it's right for you, it's ultimately up to you at the end of the day. But I would just encourage you to keep all this in mind. If you think that there's something wrong with listening to bands that are non-Christian, of course. That's all I'm trying to say here. But either way, my thoughts on Christian metal as a whole, I find a lot of it to be generic, with just a few exceptions. There are a few good bands in the genre. I know some people name Stryper as another good Christian metal band. Now, when it comes to Stryper, I think I've heard one of their songs, maybe a couple songs from them. I like what I've heard. I'm not super into them, but I don't think they're bad. I don't think Stryper is bad, but I just never got into them, that's all. Not too bad of a classic Christian metal band, so there's that too. But when it comes to these other bands, Impending Doom, For Today, Fit for a King, August Burns Red. Now, August Burns Red I used to like, but they're another band I kind of just moved away from over time. I think a lot of their stuff is a little too samey for me, so yeah. But Demon Hunter, once again, I think is the exception and still my favorite, especially in Christian metalcore. So there you go. But anyhow, that's all for this video. Let me know what you think. What do you think of Christian metal? I'm curious to know your thoughts. And even if you disagree with me, that's okay. You could be someone that thinks that there's a lot of great bands in Christian metal. That's okay. That's okay. You know, we all can have different takes, different opinions, but I encourage you to keep all this in mind for sure. So with that said, thank you for watching, take care, and have a good one.